And welcome to another episode of RTAF Podcast. Thanks for being here. Be sure to at least check out the Patreon that I've set up. We have been dubbed the artsiest podcast in the metaverse by the Council of the Metaverse. Yeah, I'm reading this off an email right now. I mean, that's a great honor. I am stoked to have that one on our belt. We, other awards that we, the royal we, meaning I, have received. Other awards include the Draven's Hoopla Award for Safest Haven of Unadjusted Creatives, the Benny Dingus Award for the longest editing session of a non-local conversation. And then, of course, there's the Agnes Chiller Trophy, which is awarded to the podcast with the most amount of potential sponsors. Potential was italicized in this email, and they're saying here that, yes, I should have emphasized potential sponsors there. So, I mean, if you needed any more justification for joining the Patreon Pod Squad, there it is. So head on over to patreon.com/RTAF podcast, link in the description. And this week's guest is the super talented oil painter, Olivia Jane. Olivia tells us about going from being a sales rep in the cannabis industry, where she was working like 80 hours a week, and then she got fired because she started taking time off. It's typical like burnout job kind of story. What's not typical about it is that right after that, she traveled the world solo for 2.5 years. And we get into details of how traveling changes a person for the better, the ability to say no, comparison on social media, and dealing with that old inner critic all creatives, all artists have. So once again, just want to shout out the Patreon one more time. Patreon.com/RTAF podcast. Link is in the description. And let's jump right into this interview. Thank you, Olivia, for coming on. And thanks to my 12 current sponsors. You guys are the shit. Couldn't do it without you. Wouldn't do it without you. Let's jump into this episode with Olivia Jane. 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 With Olivia. Welcome to RTAF. Thanks for being a guest, Olivia.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of want to get you to introduce yourself and maybe just give us a little backstory on how you came to be creating art and making paintings, and just maybe give us a little rundown of like what your childhood was like, and then up to where you are now.
Well, I'm Olivia Jane. My backstory is pretty long and wild, but I can summarize. I grew up in France. I was born in Indiana. So when people ask me where I'm from, I'm just kind of like list the last place I lived.
Yeah.
But when I was like 12, I ended up moving to Colorado and got into art when I was 16. I was always into art. I spent a lot of time alone when I was a kid, so I would sew a lot. I sewed outfits for my dolls and stuff.
Oh, sweet.
Nice. And I was always creatively inclined, I would say. And my brother as well, both of us, he's more musically inclined. But we're both very creative people. And but I didn't really learn how to paint until I was 16. I I went to three different high schools. I was kind of a troubled kid and
Same.
failed, or no, I was asked to leave the first high school, failed the second high school,
Oh.
and then was really fortunate to end up at an outdoor education school
Oh, hell yeah.
in Carbondale, Colorado.
I've
It's
never
really,
heard of one of those outdoor education.
yeah,
Is it like for like
it's
wilderness stuff or?
it is. It's really interesting because it kind of drew together two polar opposite kinds of kids.
Hmm.
Kids who were in trouble all the time and needed nature therapy, and kids who were like born and raised by like mountain climbers and
Right.
hardcore athletes. So it was a really interesting mix and change of scenery for me as a city kid. I always grew up in really big cities. Um, my first time living in the mountains and being absolutely humbled by nature and just the potential dangers like getting lost, getting stuck in a blizzard,
Yeah.
having to wear the little beacons in case we got in an avalanche. It was really hardcore, but I learned a lot. And there was an art program there, and I didn't get into the glass blowing class. So
Mm.
I thought, well, drawing and painting sounds good too. But they didn't teach acrylic painting. They taught oil painting, and you just dive
Nice.
right in. And so for me, it was just life changing. I thought it was so cool, and I loved it. So,
How old were you then? Like
and
16 or something? 17?
I was 16.
Yeah.
Yeah. I transferred midway through junior year. So I got to spend a year and a half at this other school and kind of get
Okay.
my life together a bit.
Nice. Nice.
I feel like so many of us were bad kids. I don't want to say bad. I just want to say um, experimental and pushing the boundaries. And yeah, maybe there's problems with our system more than us, but I
Yeah.
was not wanting to play the game.
Yeah. Same. Uh, I wasn't well adjusted, I think is the term I've been trying to use lately. Um,
Yeah.
but I think there's something like a rebellious spirit that correlates to being a creative person, because
Hmm.
you're always thinking of crazy ideas and maybe like 3 out of 10 are like worth it, and the other ones are just like things that just pop in your head. And when those don't align with like like you said, the system we're brought up in, uh, you get a lot of friction between like parents and teachers and things like that.
Yeah, I spent so much time not understanding the point of it and really
Hmm.
felt like I was wasting time. So I feel like I've spent all my 20s so far just trying to make up for what I felt was lost time
Yeah.
at school.
Nice. It seems like you're doing a great job of it.
Thanks.
Yeah. So did you end up going to college or anything like that, or?
I did.
Yeah.
So yeah, luckily I had the opportunity to go to that school. I got things in order. I was able to go to a really good college. I started at Lewis and Clark in Portland, Oregon.
Nice.
And right before I left for school, my parents had a little party for me and had all their friends over. And I had all these, 50 some year olds telling me, like, you should study what you like, because whatever you study, you're going to have to,
Yeah.
study it thoroughly. And then you're going to have to do a thesis. So, you might as well study what you like. And at that time, I was 18. I couldn't think of anything I liked more than art and psychology. So
Oh,
I
nice.
focused on that. I definitely thought I was going to be an art therapist for a long time.
That's super cool.
Um,
I studied
but
I
like,
studied psych too in college.
nice.
I didn't know
It's
that I
awesome.
was an artist yet, but I was
Fun.
I was thinking a lot, so I figured maybe I'll study my own
Yeah,
brain.
totally. It's
Yeah,
fascinating.
yeah, for sure.
And I think art does play a huge role in that. There's like so much crossover and so many metaphors in painting that are metaphors for life in general.
Absolutely.
Um, but yeah, like so many other kids who did study art in school, I went to liberal arts colleges, so they kind of spread you thin with all other kinds of classes.
Mm.
And I ended up only taking 2 painting classes. The first teacher I had told me not to be an artist. He said, just don't even try. And I will not be your advisor, and you shouldn't study art. And just super discouraging.
Wow.
So luckily I'm the kind of person who doesn't do what I'm told. And I was just
Yeah.
like, no, I'm going to do it anyway. And so I left college feeling like entirely unprepared and uninspired to be an artist. I just didn't really think it was possible.
Mm-hmm. And so after that, after college, what did you do? Did you get a job?
I was so determined to travel.
Nice.
That's all I wanted to do. And I just felt like whatever else was going to come my way in life, I would figure it out after traveling. So I had a very like narrow mind about that. And but no opportunities. Like no one's waiting for you after school to hand you a list of potential jobs.
Right.
I think I had $1,000 to my name from selling some paintings,
Mm-hmm.
but they were like still lifes and stuff that I would sell to my family.
Mm-hmm.
And I had $1,000. I had a car that I was borrowing. I like moved into that car and drove across the country. I was in North Carolina at that time, just outside of Asheville. And
Nice.
I drove across the country. I like went to some festivals, made it to Oregon, and met some people there who literally wrote an address in Sharpie on my hand and said, "Go to this place and you'll get work." And it was trim work, of course.
Yeah.
So after college, I lived out of a Honda Civic for like 9 months. I trimmed weed until I had more money than I knew what to do with.
Yeah.
And somehow survived the many dangerous scenarios that came about. And I bought a one-way ticket to New Zealand and traveled for a year.
Epic.
Yeah.
That's
it was
so
really
badass.
life-changing.
Nice. That's crazy. I just want to mention this. This doesn't really further. We'll get back to the story, but like, so I had a Honda Civic, and I've trimmed a bunch of weed, and I traveled right after college. Also, I just went to I did 34 days in Europe, but it was still really fun. So cool synchronicity there.
Yes, Honda Civics.
Yeah, yeah. The muffler blew out on that thing, and I was very irresponsible and left it in a Natty Grocer's parking lot here or down in Denver, I guess I should say now, because I don't live there anymore. But
nice.
Great car. Can't shit
They
on the
go
Honda
the
Civic.
distance sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All right, so
yeah,
go ahead.
It was a really good idea.
Yeah.
And I'm sure for you too, just getting to see completely different cultures, all of the art.
Yeah.
I studied so much art history in school because when you are studying art, you practically become an art history major as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the chance to take a Southeast Asian art history class.
Oh, cool.
And we just were looking at pictures from these temples, and I just thought, I have to go there. It's not enough to just look at slides. I need to be there.
Totally.
So I ended up planning that first trip primarily around these sites that primarily Buddhist and Hindu sites that I really wanted to see. And I did other trips around that, but that was really cool. When I came home, I was very broke and had no idea what to do again.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up getting a sales career in the cannabis industry. And at 23, all of a sudden I had a big girl career.
Yeah.
That I did not expect.
What were you doing?
And I was a sales rep for the company, but at the time they were a startup. So there was only 8 people working there. And we wanted our product to get all the way across Colorado. So I had to drive about 1,600 miles a week and make friends with every dispensary across the whole state and pitch them on our products. So it was a lot of driving.
Yeah.
It was a lot of talking. I was always on call. I was always juggling several things at the same time. Um, I really got a scope into what it's like to be just like hustling at that level. It was at least 80 hours a week that I was working, sometimes more. It was, yeah, really, really intense. And kind of out of nowhere too. So that pushed art again, even farther out of reach. I was still painting on the side, but I just didn't have time to make it a priority at all.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so sorry, my dog was barking there. I had to reach down and tell her to stop.
Attention.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So okay, so you're doing this sales rep job, and I'm sure at like 80 hours a week, you're starting to feel some burnout, right?
So much burnout.
And you're young too, but it's still like, I mean, I don't think I've ever worked 80 hours a week, even like on painting. The most I get is like somewhere around 60. And, you know, that
And that's a lot.
yeah,
It's
that's
a
a
lot.
lot. And I even get burned out on that, like, as an doing something that I love, you know?
Right.
So what was I'll do a little spoiler here. What was the straw that broke the camel's back that kind of made you like be like, I gotta quit this?
Yeah. Well, the reason kind of that I got in that situation in the first place was that I was I was really young. I was in an abusive relationship and I
No.
realized I need to get away. I was like, I have to make my own money. I need to be financially independent
Mm-hmm.
and I need like a real deal job. And I'm really happy. Like, I'm so like no shame about any of that. I think that strong, independent people end up in abusive relationships all the time. It's just at some point you got to take your life back. And
Yeah.
so I felt like doing it, having financial security at that time would be the best way to start.
Totally.
And, but I was also really depressed. So that's why I kept working so hard because I was like, if I just keep working, I can avoid these issues, but you can't, they just keep following you. So there
Yeah.
was a point where I was like, okay, I'm really struggling here and I need a way out. So I decided to do ayahuasca for the first time.
Oh wow.
And I was like 25 then. And I just felt like it was my last resort. I was like, I always thought it would be something I would want to do. And, and the right people came into my life. It felt really like the right time.
Yeah.
And it absolutely like changed my life. I know a lot of people say that, but it really was profound. I was so sick after the ceremonies for like a week. I couldn't go back to work and I had never taken a day off work ever.
Wow.
So finally I'm like so sick. I'm in bed and I can't get out. And I'm just thinking, what am I doing with my life? I hadn't paused, in all
Right.
of this
Yeah.
time, long enough to really consider what I was doing with my life.
Mm-hmm.
And it was finally the pause I needed to be like, this job is sucking my soul.
Yeah.
It's straight up sucking my soul. And I need to do something more worthwhile because I'd been in a bad car accident. And I was like, you know what? If I just die in a car accident on the highway tomorrow, I will not feel good about the last few years of my life.
Totally. Yeah.
So yeah, I started living it up, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, you know what? I'm a saleswoman. I've got money saved. I'm going to spoil all my clients and I'm going to go to the gym a bunch and I'm going to have work-life balance.
Nice.
I'm going to try that.
Yeah.
And that was a great plan. Lasted about 3 months. The company noticed and fired me.
Oh, damn.
Yep.
They were like, oh, you're not working 80 hours a week and breaking yourself to do so.
Yeah, we'll find someone else who will. And like I'd been there since we only had 8 employees, and now they're one of the biggest cannabis companies. Well, they will be one of the biggest cannabis companies in the world. We had to sell like $250,000 of hash a month.
Jeez.
And they took away our commission. They took away my commission because they didn't think a woman my age should make money like that.
What? Who are they?
Oh yeah.
Call them out.
Oh yeah.
Call them out.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I do want to call them out, but the
Did
truth
you
is
sign
this is
something?
everywhere.
Oh yeah.
No, I didn't sign anything,
Okay.
but it's just this is an issue everywhere, and kind of coming to that realization and be like, wait, coworkers, like how much are you getting paid? How much are you getting paid? Realizing I was the best salesperson and I was getting paid the least because I was a young woman, and that totally lit a fire under my ass. Like I've I've been on the feminist path ever
Yeah,
since,
yeah,
and
yeah.
no looking back. I'm just like, no, this is real, and this happens all the time in every industry.
That's horseshit.
Yeah, it's total horseshit. Yeah. So, but it felt like the whole world's pressure had been taken off my shoulders. All of a sudden, I didn't
Right.
have to be tied to my phone. I didn't have to talk to my 300 clients all the time. I could just live my life. I had money saved. Like it was a really good feeling of
Yeah, yeah.
just scared too. Like something big is going to happen in my life, but I don't know what, and I don't know when. And I just need to get all my stuff in a storage unit because I know I need to travel light. And
Yeah.
so then was the beginning of a whole nother adventure where I left the country for 2.5 years.
And so are you painting throughout this time as well? Are you making art?
Fortunately, yes,
Nice.
because I didn't paint on that first trip. I didn't even call myself an artist at that point.
Really?
Not until I got fired from my sales career. Then I was like, well, now I'm not a salesperson anymore.
Yeah.
I suppose that I'm an artist. And just calling myself an artist
Yeah, yeah.
actually made all the difference, because then when I was out in the world, I didn't know how else to represent myself. So I said, I'm an artist.
Yeah.
And just by saying that, it opened all these doors. And I started painting murals, which I had never done before.
Mm-hmm.
And just immediately like got into murals. So that's how I ended up painting the rest of the trip.
That's super rad. I think so I think I remember when we met, but let me check with you. Like it was a Desert Hearts like warehouse party in
Yeah.
like 2016 or something like that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and I was like super shy and like painting in like a different corner because
yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
know anybody.
Yeah. Well, I saw your work and I was like, holy shit, who is this? And at the time, I think you mentioned that you were working for the cannabis company still. Does that timeline
Yeah.
line up?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, because I was like, oh man, she might be like the best artist here or the best painter here. And yeah, it's just funny, like you said, just lining things up, even with like a simple word or like language, how that like changes your whole brain and how you like frame the world by calling yourself an artist rather than being like, oh, I work for this cannabis company as a salesperson.
It's so different. And I was always really shy to like hang out with the other live painters because when I was doing my career, I could only do stuff like that every once in a while. Like
Right. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
couldn't really do it with any regularity. And I'd been a festival goer for so long, but strictly with the name tag of I'm a music freak. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I like to dance. I love live music. I live for live music, and I'm here to support musicians and other artists. And I never thought about being someone who could be contributing to that experience differently,
Yeah.
as in making art there. So
Yeah.
that really didn't occur to me for many, many years, unfortunately, because I feel like it would have been really fun.
Yeah. I
But
think
it's still fun.
for sure, for sure. I think I went the opposite route and I was like, I'm an artist. And then I like sort of, it's like when your mom gets you a shirt when you're a little kid and she's like, oh, it doesn't fit. Well, you'll grow into it, like one of those things.
Yes.
But yeah, it's just funny to like look back in hindsight and be like, oh, I was calling myself an artist then. Maybe that was a little too early, but I think it works out either way, right? Like you can
It does, and it's better not to be so hard on yourself. Like
for sure.
I've always been an artist, but I was always tiptoeing around that because societal pressure probably is the biggest factor.
Yeah.
Feeling like, well, that's not a good way to make money. And if you want to travel the world and if you want to do this, like your my conditioning was telling me that I couldn't do it as an artist.
Yeah.
But the reality is that I was able to do it as an artist, but I had to work really hard at that other job and save money.
Yeah.
But not everybody I meet traveling has a bunch of money saved up. There's a
Right.
lot of people who are totally winging it and somehow it works. Like
Yeah.
it does.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely want to talk a little bit more about travel and what it means to you, and kind of in the context of like, I believe Terrence McKenna said something like there's like psychedelics, uh, sex, and traveling are like the most mind expansive things that a person can do, right? Um, do you draw any parallels between like having, a trip and a trip? You know what I mean? Like, what's
Oh,
it like?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's in some ways my journeys, my 3.5 years abroad. I mean, that was like the trip. Those were the trips of my lifetime,
Yeah.
right? It's so exhausting and mind bending, and you never come back the same person. So in a way, it's like if you were going on a trip, but a lot longer, and there's no fucking way you can come back the same person. And ideally with psychedelics, especially if used in a medicinal sense, ideally that can happen too.
Yeah.
Ideally that is happening, but it was very, I'm so glad I did the trips when I did them. I was young. I had the time. It wasn't the right time for anyone else to do those trips with me. So I traveled a lot by myself. And I'm
That's
glad I
cool.
didn't wait to do that, when I'm older,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I was sleeping on like hay bales and riding trains in India. Like I'm not going to want to do that kind of stuff when I'm retired aged,
Right.
maybe I
Yeah.
will, but
Yeah.
um,
That whole
I'm so glad
idea,
I did them.
that whole idea, sorry to interject, but that you work all your life to save up money so that you can haul your like old ass around and try and enjoy places is like,
Seriously.
it's pretty
And
fucked up. It's pretty backwards, I think.
it is backwards. And I've experienced a lot of bitterness because I don't often meet Americans out traveling. But when I do, they tend to be retired folks and they hold a lot of bitterness. They're just like, how are you out here? And like, why are you out here? Well, I had to get married and I had to get a job. I'm like, whoa, 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 don't put that on me.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I chose my path and you chose yours. And
Right.
sometimes you're more or less affected by societal pressure. There was an aspect of me that's always been like, no, this is what I want. This is the life I want to design for myself. And I'm going to go for it no matter what anyone thinks. And I had people telling me not to go to any of the countries I wanted to go to because I wasn't safe. You're a
Really?
woman. You can't do this. You can't do that. It just fueled me more. I was very determined to go anyway. And once you get out there, you realize there's so many other people traveling. Some
Yeah.
of them may come off a lot more naive than you. And so it gives you confidence. You're like, okay,
Yeah.
you're out here. I'm out
This
here.
guy's doing it? Like,
This guy's doing it somehow. So
yeah, that's awesome.
yeah, it's
That's such a
been
great
very
trait to
cool.
have too, to just not listen to all these external voices that are telling you no. Like I had a real tough time with that until, I mean, in terms of like career and like the way you're kind of supposed to live life, sort of picked and choose, like, like, oh, I don't want to get married. Okay, that's one that's like pretty easy. But then like the whole you can't be an artist or you can't survive off making art is like I've had to work really hard to decondition myself from that. And it seems like that might be a personality trait that you have, like to be able to just say no and like be stubborn and know that everything's going to work out. I'm very like
It
externally
is.
motivated, and I think that that's maybe why I was like, I'm an artist, and so now everyone hears me say that I'm an artist, so I have to keep doing the thing, you know? I don't know.
Yeah. There's an element of me that's like that too, especially with my trips. Like
Hmm.
I talk a big game, like, oh, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. But then I try to really do those things.
Yeah.
And sometimes I change my mind or the course redirects, but I tend to talk myself into it
Yeah, yeah,
so that then I know I'm going to be held accountable. Like
yeah. Hmm.
this is something that is now expected of me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So when you're on, okay, so you're on this 3.5 year journey. And so where are you going? Like Southeast Asia, you mentioned India. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah,
how, I can't just, sorry, just one more thing. Ha- were you, did you have a plan or did you kind of just flow with everything?
Um, I usually started with a plan that
Right.
would get me through the first 3 months of the trip. Very loose plan, just like I'm going to this country, then that country type of a plan.
Hmm.
And I would get the tickets far in advance. And then I would not plan anything because the truth is, when you're on a trip for that long, and you also, in the countries I tend to go to, there's very poor service, Wi Fi connection.
Sure.
And just trying to load WhatsApp and try to tell the people closest to me that I made it somewhere and that I'm okay and trying to find the next hostel. That's about like the as much as I can handle struggling with slow internet. After that, you're just like, what, fuck it. I'll talk to some people. I'll figure out where's the next cool place and I'll get a train ticket and then totally wing it. And traveling in India is one of my favorite places to go because people there are so curious about you. So you end up meeting tons of people who are from India. A huge chunk of my fan base is in India because they love
Nice.
finding the murals that I've done. They take pictures, they share them, and then maybe their cousin or their friend has a restaurant somewhere and they want a mural, and it just like keeps spiraling into more and more jobs. I had to just start saying no to tons of opportunities. I was like, I need a whole nother trip
Yeah.
to do all of this. So it was very cool like that. Just kind of always kept unraveling. I met this girl in a cafe in the desert part of India in Rajasthan. And she was telling me how amazing her trip to Ethiopia was. And she showed me some pictures. So I bought a one-way ticket to Ethiopia like the next day. So that's kind of how it went.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Um, do you have any books or any resources that you would recommend for people who want to make like traveling kind of an art? That's what it seems like to me is like it's like in a painting sometimes you'll or at least this is the way I work I'll be like painting something I'm like, "Oh, that kind of, this shape or this like compositional element or whatever would go well right here." And then you add it and sort of flow with what's there and see what opportunities you can get. So is there any website or blog that you would recommend?
I just think if anyone's really wanting to travel, but they're nervous about it, even this goes for painting too, like so many metaphors that work either way. You just have to start. That's the
Mm-hmm.
hardest thing.
Mm-hmm.
You have to start, you have to put color on the blank canvas, or you've got to get your backpack and you've got to buy the ticket
Yeah.
and get on the plane. And starting is the hardest part. But once you get out there, you'll meet so many people who are doing the same thing. And it'll blow your mind just how you link up with other people. If you travel alone, you'll end up meeting more people than you would if you have a friend. Because if you have a friend, you're kind of like insulated with them. You're like, whoa, like,
Yeah.
look at all this stuff
Yeah.
going on. I have a buddy I can talk about it with. But
Mm-hmm.
if you have no one with you, you end up just kind of gravitating to the other people who are there, oftentimes local people, ideally.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if anyone was nervous about starting, get one of the Lonely Planet books. They have them for every country. They have tips
Nice.
on the language. They have hostels that you can stay at. So that way, when you arrive in a new city, let's say it's late at night, you at least have this whole book and you don't have Wi-Fi or whatever. You have this whole book of places like, oh, I want to go to this hostel, that hostel. And those books make it really easy. And then I'd say once you're a couple weeks into your trip, you can just leave that sucker on a little bookcase at one of the hostels for someone else to pick up.
Nice.
Because I just don't think you need it. Like once you get the hang of
it's like training wheels.
How it's flowing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Then you're ready to go.
You're ready to spread your wings.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so so you're on this trip, you're kind of flowing. You went to Ethiopia. And that's, yeah, I mean, that seems to be like the pinnacle in my mind, at least, a white Western person from America, like going to like an African country or, I mean, pretty much, or like maybe Russia. I don't know why, or China, but going one of those three places seems to be sort of like the pinnacle of like travel flex, I guess, for lack of a better word. Was it any more difficult to integrate or like talk to people in Ethiopia than it was like Southeast Asia, where a lot of tourists seem to go, like India too?
Yeah, I met very, very few travelers in Ethiopia. Mm-hmm. Like maybe 3 or something like that.
Yeah.
There were people, I did one tour there where it's like a 4-day planned thing and you're in these Jeeps. Mm-hmm. And so I met some travelers there. But otherwise I was really on my own, mostly taking small buses that often had livestock on them. And I was definitely the only white person around. Mm-hmm. And I stood out a lot. And I have a lot of tattoos and I had a shaved head. So I was definitely a sight to be seen for the people there. Mm-hmm. They couldn't figure out if I was a man or a woman because it's so ingrained in their gender norms that women have long hair in Ethiopia and men have short hair. Mm-hmm. And so people would be like looking at me for extended periods of time, trying to figure out who I was, what I was, where I was from. I fortunately was able to pick up the language pretty easily there. It's called Amharic. It's a very cool language, and I didn't find it that difficult. So I learned as much as I needed to get by, and then that makes it a lot easier to get in with the local people and to have like an authentic experience. But there were some moments that I think back on and I get chills still thinking about going to these tribal markets and where I'm touching their face and they're touching my face. And it was like looking at something for the first time. And because they do a lot of scarification and facial tattoos.
Oh, wow.
And they were feeling the tattoo on my back and looking at my septum ring and looking at my gauged ears and just the cultural difference where they were very easily able to see past the color of my skin.
For sure.
And they thought I was from a different tribe down the road.
Really? That's cool.
Yeah, because of my gauges.
Oh, so right.
That's all. They know that tribe is into that and their world is that valley. So they couldn't really think that I was from elsewhere. Mm-hmm. So that was so cool. I mean, I could talk for days about Ethiopia. It's an amazing place. It was very difficult. It was very good for me, humbling.
Yeah.
I rarely had water or electricity. Maybe only twice in 5 weeks I had those at the same time.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, that's
cool.
Certainly an experience.
Yes.
Was that your
I was like sleeping on a goat skin, like in a hut, like with this family, drinking the beer that they made and getting violently ill, and just, being part of this tribe for a little while. It was very, very an experience I would never trade for anything.
So when they were like touching your face and your tattoos, was that kind of like a form of communication for them? Or since there was sort of like a language barrier, Was that part of it?
Yeah, it seemed like there was just a lot of mutual awe, and they really wanted to touch me and touch my back, and because my back's a little bit like brailed with my
Mm-hmm.
tattoo,
Mm-hmm.
so feeling the texture, and I was feeling the texture of their scarification, and it was um it was just this moment where I was the only person out of thousands of people at the tribal market who was white and who was not from that tribe or those three tribes that were there that day. So
Wow.
it was a lot of attention on me. And that was the uncomfortable thing. I try to go I try to blend in wherever I go. It never works, but
Yeah,
that was one place where there was no chance of blending in.
for sure.
And it's really exhausting to have that many eyes on you at all times, but definitely an unforgettable experience.
Yeah. Gives you a different angle of a perspective, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. People were very kind. And anyone who did speak English, word would travel so fast that there was a Western woman in town. So
Mm-hmm.
people would come find me and practice English with me.
Oh, nice. That's
Yeah.
cool. Were you doing like a language trade kind of thing? Were you trying to learn theirs while
Well,
you were
it was,
teaching
yeah, it was funny because I'm trying to learn Amharic and they want
Right.
to practice English. And that also happens in India all the time. I was like, no, I really want to practice Hindi. And people were like, no, well, I want to practice English. So
Nice. Um, so yeah, okay. So was Ethiopia the last spot you stopped before coming back to the States, or you kept going?
there was so much more. I just kept going. From Ethiopia, I went to Egypt. I crossed over land to Israel. I went to Turkey and I hitchhiked across Turkey by myself. I went to Tori
Nice.
to study art in the
Hell yeah.
middle of the trip,
Really?
which was so cool. I'd always wanted to do something with the Academy of Visionary Art. I wanted to properly study art now that I felt like I had a good base and I was ready to like dive into materials and technique more. So that was really big for me. Getting to see people that I could speak English with was big. I had almost forgotten how to speak at that point,
Wow.
which it's surprising how fast that happens.
That's interesting. Yeah, I guess language
It's a while.
is kind of a technology if you think about it.
And I've been speaking very broken English for, I think, 9 months at that point,
Mm-hmm.
and speaking very simply and mostly trying to learn other languages. Um, so yeah, it was like I got there and it's like, oh my God, I don't know how to speak anymore. I don't know how to talk to people.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of people have felt like that during the pandemic. Maybe the podcast, it's been good practice
Yeah,
to
it
keep
has.
talking to
And
people.
even still I'm not some days I'm just like, where are my words? And
Hmm.
it all depends too on, I mean, who knows, a billion things, like how well my brain's firing that day, the weather,
How
all
much
this other.
caffeine?
Yeah, that's why I've been sort of taking sips out of this mug as we keep going. So you went to Tori. Was that kind of was that the first time you met Amanda?
That was,
Or
I'd met Amanda before that.
hmm
So then it was extra exciting that we were going to be able to hang out in Europe together. And
yeah,
um, it was so much fun. It was some of the most fun I've ever had. Everybody else
it's
that went
great.
to Tori that year, we bonded so hard and we all left feeling like we made lifelong friends. And we did. It was really cool.
Hell yeah. Yeah, just for people who don't know, it's this place in Italy called Torre Superiore, and it's what was it, like an old monastery on top of a hill or something like
Yeah,
that?
it was from my understanding, it was a village of separate small households, but then back in the 1700s, there was some impending like danger in the area. So they built a fortress around their small community
Hmm.
and kind of turned it into a maze castle fortress.
Yeah, yeah,
And so now it's an eco village and you eat like the best food you've ever eaten in your life while you get to paint all day with people you look up to. It's really cool.
yeah, yeah. It's like an art vacation, um,
Yes.
and just a super blast. Like Amanda Sage has taught there, and a bunch of other legends. Like Maura Holden was there the year I was there. David and Laurie Weaver, David Heskin and Laurie Weaver. Yeah, just really cool. I can't say enough good things about that spot. And it's like it's like the foot of the Alps, on the northwest side of Italy, um, near Monaco and France and stuff like that. So
It's incredible. If anyone out there ever has an opportunity to go, even just as a eco retreat, you can go just
right,
to hang out there. But it's such a beautiful place, and
they've got like fig trees
there to
growing
paint.
all over the place.
Oh
You
my
could just like
gosh, it's
pick figs.
heaven.
Yeah, it's great.
It's heaven.
Um, but yeah, so I kind of want to. I'm trying to like merge into talking about art and painting and stuff
Yeah.
a little bit. When you came back, did you just throw yourself into making art?
Yeah. So I kind of brushed on it earlier. Like when you come back from, at least I'll speak for myself, when I've come back from these trips,
Mm-hmm.
I've always had a really, really, really tough, like, few years just trying to figure it all out again.
Mm-hmm.
You come back, and then there's all the pressure of what you thought you'd be doing when you come back. And I was like, well, it's time to hit the ground running with art, and I'm just going to do it. And so, but I came back with like $19 to my name. Right.
Nice.
So it,
Like
I was
slid in
starting
there.
at
Yeah.
base,
Yeah.
I crawled back to my parents' place in New Orleans, lived in like a closet room for like 6 months.
Like Harry Potter.
And yeah, it was Harry Potter style. There's no windows. And got a little art studio in New Orleans, and was like, okay, like time to hit the ground running. And I put together a big solo show in New Orleans, and
Nice.
the opening happened on March 10th, 2020.
Oh God.
And the next day, everything shut down. The gallery turned into a squat like shortly thereafter, and
Did you get your
I had to go
paintings out?
rescue all my art.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
rough.
So that, boom. And then
Yeah.
I was displaced. I decided to leave New Orleans, come back to Colorado. Then I spent the summer growing my own food and painting. So yeah, there's so many of these like jump starts where you're like, okay, I'm doing it, and then all these roadblocks kind of come in. And what keeps becoming obvious to me is that no matter what, art is going to keep requiring more of me. It's like, no, I want more of your time. I want more of your dedication. And then you'll get to where you want to be after more time, more practice, more dedication than you can possibly imagine.
Yeah.
And that's what it takes.
Yeah. And I think that like being a creative person or an artist, it almost means that like you'll never actually arrive. Right.
No,
And that's
always arriving.
Right. It's like a, eternal return kind of thing, to quote Meow Wolf a little bit. It's like you kind of keep this carrot dangling in front of you, like, oh, it's like the next best painting, or I'll be in a place financially where I need to be, and then everything will be okay. But I think that that's like a big illusion that even in just like normal life, we all think that. We all have this idea in our minds of where we want to be, but it never actually quite works out 100% of the way that you even try to like say manifest it or whatever. Like,
oh yeah,
you always have to kind of just remember to be like grateful for the moment and for what you do have. But then there's like something I struggle with is like balancing that with like, you're always going to desire more, right? You're always going to want something better or for your art to be better. But you have to just also appreciate this next brush stroke or this next step, like to use the travel metaphor, like one foot in front of the other.
yeah, no, but on that track, it's like I I keep feeling like I'm arriving, and I am continuously arriving. And I know that I'm getting better at painting and honing in on the level that I want to achieve. And that feels amazing. And then people, primarily people that I met while being a gypsy, support me. They want to support me. And so then that makes me feel amazing when
That's
people are
awesome.
willing to pay what you want for your work. It's the best feeling in the world. So it's been just over 2 years since I came home with $19, and it's been so crazy, but it's been really magic too. There's been a lot of loss, a lot of gains, and it's all kind of led me here. And now I live with Amanda Sage. It's been about 9 months now. And we are, co-creating this experiment of living in community and trying to move forward in our careers while growing a lot of food, while being part of this community. There's about 9 different projects that happen here aside from all of our art. So
Oh, wow.
We are very busy and experimenting and participating. It's full on, and it's been spreading me a little thin as well. Just all of the different things to do. It's like, oh, I'm going to do there. I'm going to like try to get all these chores out of the way, and then I can paint. But when you're busy like that, sometimes it makes you more productive because you only have a few hours to paint.
Totally. Yeah, I feel like
the way I did want that.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I talk about that phenomenon a lot on this show. I've learned sort of to like during the day, I'll get all like chores, things that I need to get done out of the way, admin stuff for the business, like emailing people or whatever. And I'm not always like on point with that either. But if I can do all that stuff and then get it out of the way and still have 4 or 5, 6 hours to paint at the end of the night, I feel like it's a much better painting session because I mean there's something about like holding yourself back like all day, getting your shit done and getting it done right, and then you have like this, it's almost like it feels timeless, right? This little block of time at the end of the day you have to paint after you've taken care of business, I guess.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's been lighting a fire in me, and yeah, I keep coming to these points where I'm feeling really good about art, and then I sometimes retract and feel like, oh my God, deflated, or just the things we tell ourselves are unsuccessful stories around money, or our conditionings come back. And I almost went back into my career this year.
Really?
Almost. My other career, I should say.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Because it was very tempting. It was like, things have gotten tough in the pandemic, and that seemed like a way that I could get back in and make money and save for the next big dream. But then I had to be like, no, actually, I really feel like I'm finally at a place where my time is best spent making art and being in the garden, doing things that also feed my soul.
Yeah.
So I don't want to go back there, but having tiptoed around it again gave me more fuel to be like, no, I have to make this work somehow.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm at now, just getting in the mindset of like, no, this has to work. I have to make this work. And I have to change some of my ideas around money being bad, because that's not true.
Yeah.
And so far it is working. I'm feeling really optimistic. The work I'm working on right now is going towards a gallery in Santa Fe.
Nice.
Come winter, I'm moving south somewhere. I don't quite know yet, but the goal is to create a life that is a little more simple and much more focused around my work. And just ready to really dive deeper.
Is that kind of your your goals for the future, or what you want out of like the next few years?
Yeah. Right now, I really want to expand. I've gotten this far with the support of my friends and family,
Mm-hmm.
and I really want to get my art in front of more faces and more people who may be interested in collecting. And I think going through the galleries is a good way of doing that.
Definitely.
Trying to branch out into more contemporary galleries. Um, I apply for everything at every possible opportunity,
Mhm.
and you have to get used to being denied like over and
Oh yeah.
over and over again.
Yeah.
Keep doing it, and yeah, like last weekend, I walked into a gallery and felt confident, and I felt like it was the right place and right time, and I left being introduced as the new artist. So
Oh, nice.
sometimes it works like that too.
Congrats. So,
Thanks.
um, yeah, do you email a lot of galleries then too with your work?
I do all the open calls essentially.
So
Like
you
anytime there's an open call.
are you part of, or do you get emails from Cafe Call for Entry?
No,
Okay. So if
but
you want a
maybe I
good
should.
resource, yeah, it's I think it's cafe.net or .org. They send me an email like every few days, so I'm trying to find it, but anyway, I'll put the link in the description once I actually find it in my email for everybody,
Cool.
and I'll send it to you too. But it's call for entry. That's the kind of like abbreviated form is cafe. And
Hmm.
if you look it up, they have a lot of them. It's just so many different things. They'll have like murals or just like different art projects that you can apply to, and a lot of them have like an entry fee, but it seems to be a great resource.
Oh yeah, and that's a standard thing too.
Hmm.
The entrance fee for anything,
Yeah.
but it's worth it. It gets your art in front of people, and Hannah Yatta is one of my favorite artists, and just knowing that she is um, often on the one of the moderators or one of the judges for Beautiful Bazaar, so I always apply to all of their
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's just eventually like something will happen,
Yeah.
and so you just have to keep going for it.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. It can be overwhelming for. I mean, it was for me until I had like the sort of like, no, this is like a business mindset that I need to get myself into, so that I can keep pushing this, so I can keep making art. It's like this kind of like loop that you just sort of have to be involved with if you want to do it professionally.
Definitely. Yeah, and that's the struggle, part of the struggle too. It's just, I am business minded, but not with my own stuff,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
not with my own creations. I was fine selling someone else's hash. I would even trade with people when I was doing a lot of shows.
Mm-hmm.
I would travel with a jewelry case, and I would sometimes switch so that I'd be selling someone else's prints and they would be selling my jewelry
Oh,
because it was
cool.
just easier to sell someone else's things.
That's interesting.
But yeah, now I have to. It's just a constant practice and rewiring of my brain to be like, no, I think if people knew about this, I think that they would want it. So I just need to make sure people know what's available and know how they can support me, and that if I do that, people will want to support me. So
Yeah. How do you feel about the social media game? Are you good at that? I'm yeah, yeah, that's about the face that I make too.
yeah, I have so many little jobs right now, and I'm on the back end of 6 different social media accounts,
Whoa.
and
Nice.
I don't enjoy it at all. I look forward to eventually setting aside the other ones and just putting some time towards my own,
Mm-hmm.
because that is most rewarding, obviously, if you do get sales. But
Right.
mine falls to the end now because
Oh,
it's the last thing I want to do.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
for
I
sure.
just think that it's not healthy for everyone. And there's been times where social media makes me feel like a horrible artist or a horrible person. There's so much like comparing, and then that it doesn't have to be used that way, of course. But I think if you find yourself going into that hole where it's not making you feel better and it's making you feel worse about your art, or in my case, I was comparing myself to people who are really masters at their craft.
Yeah.
People who are 30 years older than me, who've put in way more time. And so it's not a fair comparison whatsoever. And you shouldn't compare anyway. But I think it's important to be able to step away from it when you need to, just for your sanity and if you're not using it in a healthy way.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's just like it's important to me to be authentic with it. But I definitely struggle with it. I appreciate all of the things that can happen from it. Like a lot of the murals that I got, a lot of the people I communicate with through there.
Yeah.
A lot of my fan base in India, we only communicate through Instagram.
Right.
I love all of that, but it's sometimes just, I envy thinking about artists before who didn't have to deal with any of this.
Yeah.
But
it's interesting, like, I guess we used to have to like take out ads in the paper, right? Or something like that, but
go shake hands with a bunch of people and which
and
we do still anyway.
Yeah, you still I think that's actually a lot more effective and can lead to more like leads, quote unquote, when you're like in person, because in the context of like looking at Instagram, someone's going to see potentially thousands of images every day, and it's really hard to make your thing stick out in their mind, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're in person, you can kind of talk to the person for a little while and be in the same space. I think for me at least that helps. I know there are some social media masters out there who
totally. No, I think I shine in person. I was always had bad grades, so I needed in-person interviews to get anywhere.
Yeah.
So I still feel that way about Instagram sometimes. Like, in person, then you can really dive into opportunities and stuff that way. But it is a really cool tool, and I don't want to take it for granted. It is really neat, and the way that you can connect with so many different people around the world. And because I travel and I have friends and family all around the world, it's a great tool for keeping in touch with people that, otherwise we'd have to be pen pals. I'd have to be writing a whole lot of letters.
Yeah. Yeah. So 6 accounts, that's pretty crazy to me. Like, I can barely keep up with 2. I definitely let the podcast Instagram fall by the wayside, and I'll be like, oh yeah, let me check this out after like 3 or 4 days. And I'll have like several messages and a bunch of people commenting, and I'm like, oh shit. But do you have any just like, we don't have to make this like a 5 tips to grow your Instagram, but like, do you have any like advice for people who are trying to integrate with opportunities that way?
It's kind of funny because I know what those things are,
mm-hmm.
but I don't like doing them. Like I there's one account that I run for, like it's one of my jobs. So I have to engage in that account
mm-hmm.
and comment, but it's a mindless thing, and I'm not necessarily always really vibing with that. I'm just trying to like fill space and like get it done. It doesn't always feel very authentic. When I'm commenting as myself, it is, but I don't like to spend that much time on it. With 6 accounts, then you do. I try to limit it as much as possible. The thing is with these accounts is that it wants your time.
Yeah.
So you have to decide how much time you're willing to give it and set a limit on it. And when it's time, the limit has come, just walk away.
Yeah. That's perfect advice.
That's my advice.
Yeah.
I mean, because I know that like it's it just wants your time and it
That's
wants your
perfect.
attention,
Uh-huh.
and your time and attention is really valuable. So I just think if we can be more
Absolutely.
mindful about how we want to spend it, then we can make time for the other things that really matter. I'm also a baker and a chocolatier here, so
Hell
I
yeah.
have all kinds of other things to be doing and art to make, more importantly.
Absolutely. Cool, cool. Are you fucking with sourdough at all? Is that
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
nice? Yeah, my partner Sarah started that over the pandemic. We got a puppy and sourdough bread and pizza are now flowing from our
Oh
kitchen.
yeah. Those two come hand in hand. Sourdough baby and fur baby.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That was like the COVID trifecta right there.
Yes. I fell into that as well. But it felt like a rekindling more than anything because my great grandfather was a famous Cajun baker
Oh, hell
in
yeah.
the bayou.
Nice.
Yeah. So I feel like I'm filling some role, by getting into baking.
Yeah. Did did you have any you talked about your grandfather. Was he kind of a mentor? Did you have any mentors growing up? They don't necessarily have to be art mentors, but just someone who is like, this is how life works kind of thing.
Yeah, I've been so lucky. I have so many people like that in my life. A lot of them I met a little later on. When I was growing up, I was very influenced by my parents' friends because
Hmm.
that's who I was mostly around. A lot of them were still close and look out for each other. But then as I got older, I was traveling. I met an adopted father along my journeys. Somebody I ended up going back to visit 3 times. His name was Raj. He's passed away since, but I consider him one of my dads. He
Nice.
absolutely anytime that I choose living a free life and the art life, I know that he's just like, yeah, like
Yeah.
get it.
Oh yeah.
And so yeah, so many people. My first tattoo artist, Donnie, he's a Gunnison guy. We do sweat lodges together, and he's always been influential mentor in my life. My painting mentors, Amanda and Jack Schur,
Hmm.
they've taught me everything I know about art since I didn't learn it jack shit in school.
Yeah, yeah. Totally.
So yeah, that's all been it's all paved the way to live this magical life that is unfolding.
Nice. That's super sweet. It's nice to hear.
And a
Um,
lot of these people are people I've met traveling too. So, another reason to get out there if you want to is like you will meet people that absolutely will change your life.
yeah.
Um, Raj passed away. I did a really beautiful mural for him in his room, and he wrote me into his will,
Oh wow.
and I was like, I'm able to pursue art right now more fully thanks to him. And so, yeah, you never know what's going to happen and how it's going to change your life, but it's
Yeah.
it's always worth it.
Yeah, I feel like traveling did something similar for me, but it was more in terms of finally moving away from my hometown and out here to Colorado. As I feel
Mm.
like I found um, not just mentors but friends out here who I mean this I feel like all my friends were like half of them were here waiting for me because I moved out here in 2012 and then the other half came after that and it's we're travel involves risk but if you're following something that you love, you're following like some kind of plan or dream, you'll land in a place and it will give you people, opportunities, and that's really all you need. And yeah, I think a lot of things can be like a mentor, right? Like art itself could be thought of as a mentor, really, if you get down to it.
Art whoops my ass.
Yeah, same. Um, so yeah, I have a couple more questions, and then we can wrap it up. This is this is one that I've kind of, I think all artists or creators struggle with this a little bit. How do you deal, or maybe you don't, but how, because I have a hard time with this, but how do you deal with like your inner critic or the voice inside your head kind of telling you that it's not good enough what you're making?
Yeah. Well, there's two things that come to mind. One, sometimes I resent that voice, but mostly I'm grateful for it
Mm-hmm.
because it's really pushed me to be a better artist. And when I thought my work was like good enough, now looking back, I'm like, oh my God, what was I thinking? Like it, it was fine for then, but like I'm so much better now. And um, in a lot of ways, that voice has really pushed me forward
Sure.
in my technique and rendering skills. But when that voice gets to a point where it's crippling, it's really not a good thing for your process. So I think that the best thing to do is step away from the canvas. And I feel like I've learned so much about painting in the in between times that I'm not painting.
Yeah.
And I can come back so much fresher and
Mm-hmm.
more inspired and driven than I was when I was in that space. And for me, it's hard to find something in the winter time because in the summer I'm in the garden and I'm growing food, and that's like a very physical, spiritual, mental practice that gets me out of my head because it's a physical activity, it's manual labor, but
Mm-hmm.
it's also feeding my spirit with good organic food. So it's such a win-win for me. I was growing all my own food last summer and it was so much work, and I was doing it all from scratch. This like garden that I was building with my brother had never existed before.
Wow.
And it was so hard on our bodies that I actually couldn't even hold a paintbrush for maybe like 9 weeks.
Wow.
It was a long break. I just didn't even get into the studio. I was just homesteading. And when I came back, I was a better painter. I just was like everything I've been making since is better. So I think stepping away is really valuable. That way you appreciate painting when you come back to it. Just getting your eyes on something that's a little farther away.
Yeah.
Um, Going and watching people who are really passionate about what they do. I like doing that. Like, I used to go see breakdancing competitions
Nice.
because I just love watching people who love what they do.
Yeah.
And that's inspiring. So I think that those are kind of the ways, just trying to step away and come back fresh.
Yeah. I think it gives you time to like incubate things that you've learned too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, okay, I've been asking this question to people lately. What do you think your superpower is?
Well, we kind of talked about it before. My superpower might be saying no
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah. That's such a
because I
strong
am
one.
pretty stubborn. And I
So good.
am like, I like to call them boundaries, but I'm a really boundary oriented person.
Sure.
I am an introvert, but I'm fine with being in extroverted situations.
Sure.
But it's like a switch that I have to switch on. And then I'm like, okay, the rest of the time I really prefer my own space. And so because of that, I'm very practiced in saying no. Um, because if I extend too much, I know how that comes back. I'm drained for a long time. So I think saying no and having boundaries and, when I was in my career on the weekends, I would still work all weekend, but at night, sometimes my roommates would be like, come on, like, let's go out. And I'd just be like, nope, like I'm finally going to paint, like
Yeah, yeah.
this is when I get to do the work I want to do.
Yeah.
And so I just said no to so much. And there's been times in my life that were where I was going to every show and I was on every dance floor.
Yeah.
And that was awesome. And now I'm just like, I feel like my time is best spent in the studio. So I try to prioritize that above all else.
That's so awesome. Yeah, I'm like Yeah, I had to work so hard at that, at saying no. I always wanted everyone to like me all of the time. I'm like, for a while, I was one of those people. And even when it came to like festivals that I knew that I would like be sort of like spending money to just go hang out at this festival and paint, and it's like 500 people would be there, and the chances of like making your money back are kind of slim. I'd just be like, oh yeah, yeah, like sort of taking everything as an opportunity and just being a little too overeager. And so, yeah, definitely from my perspective, that's a superpower.
Yeah, well, that is an aspect though too. Like, I think we all have to go through that phase where you say yes for the sake of exposure, and then ideally there's a time when you don't feel the pressure that you have to do that as much anymore.
Yeah.
And you're like, actually, if I just make one really dope painting or even start one really dope painting this weekend, it'll be much more worth my time than going to that festival. Or
Yeah.
I really need to let loose, and maybe going to this festival is exactly what I need.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all very manual and very, moment to moment. And you have to know yourself and be super self aware of how you're feeling and what you need, right? But yeah, I am in awe at people who are just like naturally good at setting boundaries. I would have been the guy who would have worked 80 hours a week, and my friends would be like, let's go party. And I'd be like, all right. And, you know,
Go.
cut, smash cut to the blank canvas just sitting there while I go out trying to have a good time and not really recharging. But yeah, yeah. I think maybe my superpower is lack of risk awareness.
That's a great superpower.
Yeah, yeah. I keep thinking of like different ones that I might have since I've been bombarding people with this question over and over and over again. So I'm like, I should probably think of mine. I think patience too is a good one.
Hmm.
I think it's another one of those things you kind of have to cultivate.
Yeah, especially with oil painting, I've found like I'm
Hmm.
always having to learn more and more and more patience all
Yeah,
the time. But yeah, a lot of people assume that because of the travels I've done and the kind of high risk lifestyle I've had, that I must be a super courageous person, or that maybe I'm also not assessing risk factors.
mm.
Um, but I am, and I'm assessing the risk factor of not doing that thing.
Yeah,
So I'm motivated by fear still. And I like to share that because I think people assume that somehow I'm not affected by fear, and that's not true. I very much am. I cried the entire flight from New York to Kathmandu because I had no fucking clue what I was doing with my life. And I had no idea when I was going to be home. I thought maybe a year, and it ended up being 2.5 years. So
oh wow,
I just think, fear was definitely part of it, but the fear of not doing it was bigger than the fear of doing it. And that's also where I'm at with art. It's like what can I do with my life to make this one precious life worthwhile in this body anyway? And it's definitely for me art. And so yeah, it's the fear of well, what if I don't do that? Like I
exactly.
gotta try it.
Yeah, I don't think people think about that ever when they're assessing risk. They're like,
Mhm.
it's only. I guess you could also think of like, what's the worst that could happen if I do go through with this thing? Like, what's the absolute worst? Like, you could end up stranded in India for a few days or weeks, maybe, but then like you could come back home and regroup at your parents' house and figure it
Mhm.
out.
You, the really funny thing is that that whole time I was really scared about my trip and
Hmm.
everything. And then I landed in Kathmandu, and I spent like the cash that I had on the visa, and then realized that the rest of the cash I had was kind of like slightly ripped. So they wouldn't exchange it for me.
Mm.
And all of my ATM card, like it wouldn't work, and I couldn't get money out, and it was a holiday, so I couldn't call my bank. And I did end up stranded. I was
Wow.
stranded for 4 days in Kathmandu without any money. This is the first day of my trip.
Oh
I
my
wrote a
gosh.
blog about it. I have a travel blog on my website. So if anyone wants to read the story, you can. And I got adopted by this family in the slum and became like part of their family. And they fed me for like 4 days. It was crazy. I was so sick because I wasn't like used to the food yet
Mm-hmm.
and just went straight into the slum drinking, chais and everything.
Yeah,
Whew, it was
yeah.
insane. And I was like, I thought, I don't know what I was thinking the worst thing could happen, but I was like, but that's one of the worst things
Yeah.
that could
Yeah,
happen. And
yeah.
it happened the first day. It was so funny.
You got it out of the way and you're stronger and more you're just more I feel like yeah, travel is one of those things that just make you more well-rounded. Like you have this different perspective than people who've never, been out of the county they were born in or whatever. It's
Yeah. Well, you meet all these people and even this family living in the slum of Kathmandu, like we had so much in common. And I think that that's what you learn. A lot of people are like, oh, like, everyone's so different, aren't they? And I'm like, that's not what I get from traveling.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think that we're all so similar and we love to laugh and
Right.
hear music and eat good food and tell jokes. And we had so much to talk about when I was with this family. And then when my card started working again, I like hooked them up with a bunch of food, tried to make up for all that they took care of me. And then I raised a bunch of money through Facebook for them to get them some supplies so that they could do more sustainable work, like
Nice.
getting them a kit to repair shoes so that they could keep working from that kit for a while,
Nice.
stuff like that. And none of that would have happened if I wasn't stranded
Right.
and if I hadn't been traveling alone. I would have just been like, hey, homie, like lend me some money till my card works. But I was all by myself, so I couldn't do that.
Yeah, I bet you learned like a lot about your own depth as a person during that, right?
Yeah. And I read so many books. I had a Kindle and I ate like, I calculated at some point because I've been alone, completely alone for a year and a half of that trip. I was like, I must have eaten 1,500 meals by myself.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I like to look busy a little bit when you're feeling shy or weird in
Yeah.
countries where nobody eats by themselves ever. So I was just like, I'm busy, I'm reading books.
Yeah. So you've given like a lot of advice sort of through your stories and stuff, but if you had one piece of advice to give maybe a younger artist or painter, what would that be?
Don't stop and start,
And start, yeah,
start and don't stop. And even when it's deflating and even when it feels like an uphill battle, I just think that if you are open to receiving what creativity has to offer, then you must show it and share it
yeah,
ideally with the world, because these images, these visions, or however you receive your art, it's coming for a reason. It wants to exist and it wants you to be the one to make it. And so say yes to that spirit and just keep working. I think that, a lot of the artists that I do look up to are people who are 40 years into their career. And, if I'm going from the day that I called myself an artist, it's been 4 years and a few months.
yeah, yeah.
That's nothing.
Right.
I still have so much longer to go. Even though I've been painting for 13 years,
Mm-hmm.
there was so much of that where I wasn't painting at all. And
Totally.
yeah, definitely just keep going.
Beautiful. Well, sweet. I think we'll end it there. Olivia, thanks for coming on the podcast, and tell people where they can find you, like your blog and everything.
Yeah, so my website is oliviajaneart.com, and I have a store on there with prints and stickers and all that good stuff. I'm going to be releasing new prints this summer, and there's also a blog on the same website. There's like travel blogs, and I keep adding to it slowly. I wrote a really, really big essay last summer called 100 Ways to Be a Revolutionary. And that took like a lot of my brain power and what I really felt like conveying. So I haven't actually written since. But yeah, lots of good stuff on there. And I'm on Instagram, Olivia Jane Art. And through the link tree there, you can get up to all of my different things.
And I will definitely link all that in the description. So, yeah, again, thank you so much. And it was a pleasure.
Thanks so much, Andrew. This was fun.
Yeah, sweet. And thanks everybody for listening. I'll see you next time. Thank you again for listening to another episode of RTAF Podcast. If you are interested in supporting the Patreon, that address is patreon.com/RTAF Podcast. And I want to thank all my patrons. You guys keep this engine running, and I couldn't do it without you. Go over there and check out the tiers I have available. It includes video, guest suggestions, patron-only posts, and some merchandise. Thank you again for listening. Please rate, review, subscribe. Do all those little things that help get RTAF into the consciousness of more and more people. Shout.